I think it's to think more or less about the material than more about your action, which I think is very hard in a consumer society, everything around you. But I think it's constantly thinking like, is this meaningful, or what am I doing isn't always for myself. I think you just it starts to evolve of what you think is important when you do that. And I think being born a certain way, like being born believing that you're gifted or you're smart or you're a certain way, it doesn't really matter. It's what you do with your abilities.
Unsentimental Letters is a podcast about the literature of survival, a live literary podcast where authors discuss the poems, essays, and literary pieces they built out of real life, then read them aloud. Part honest conversation, part live performance, the work, and the story behind it.
My conversation with Debra Toure answers researcher and author of Best of Undercooks directly. The Body Keeps the Score is the clinical document of what trauma does to the body over time. Debra's episode is the counter-argument. Yes, the body keeps the score, and it also keeps living. Keeps traveling to Japan, keeps making jollof rice, keeps falling in love with New York City when this music is just right. The borrowed body, the body that survived, and still taking her children to cherry blossom festivals and writing about it. Get ready for a very special conversation with Debra. The body keeps living with her, next on Unsentimental Letters. All right, well, welcome people of the world out there. I am excited. I'm here with Debra. And Debra, can you pronounce your last name? Because I really like how you say
Sure,
it.
my last name is Toure,
Awesome. Go
like
ahead.
Secretary Toure.
Awesome. So I'm excited because this is one of the people that I really enjoy reading. It's one of the people that
Thank you.
as soon as her name pops, I'm like, okay, drop everything, just read it. And I'm not just saying that because she's here. I've actually have receipts. I was in the UK vacationing and doing had a million plans this particular day. It was MLK this year, and Deborah had she posted this really interesting article that we're going to talk about more in detail. But I ended up just reading it, and then I started thinking about it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I ended up spending about half of the day researching and then writing a response to her work. So when I say I really do enjoy it, I mean it. I think one of the best attributes that somebody can have when they write something is that it makes other people think. I'm not a big fan of looking at pieces of literature that I don't know the New York Times or somebody else tells me that I ought to read. I like to read things that either I can connect with, not by pattern recognition, but just by it speaking to me, or that gets me curious about something. So you do both, Deborah. So I'm really happy that you accepted to be here. I'm so excited.
Oh,
Well,
thank you so much. I was interested. I was kind of intrigued when you said you wrote 2,000 pages or 2,000 words in response to my post about my son, because it was just sort of a knee jerk reaction. I was like, oh, this happened, and I meant to write about something else that morning, and then I
mhm.
said, oh, this is on my mind because it seems like timely.
I know it was perfect timing. It was what I call I don't know. It's like this universal symmetry, like people just thinking. It's kind of
Mhm.
cool. I think days like MLK and other days, days for reflection, do that to people. At least I still hope they do.
They do. No, and I think so much is different because MLK Day has it's sort of shifted because I think believing something and then also watching my son kind of experience it, what it's like as a boy processing the world was much different. And I think like how do I put it? It was more like, wow, how is he going to grapple with the world?
Right,
After that.
right. Actually, the other this I wasn't going to talk about this, but you just got me thinking. I remember when my son was a child, and actually, let me go back a little bit more. This is I want to date myself, but I remember how disappointed I was at Senator McCain, who I really liked personally very much,
Mhm.
but how upset I was and disappointed at his arguments against passing the MLK bill at the
Yep.
time.
Yep.
He paid heavy for that, but and yeah, it's hard when like somebody you really admire lets you down. Like when I
Yep.
found out John Lennon was a bad dad, it was like at that
Oh,
level of
absolutely.
disappointment. So a lot of things come to mind when the holiday comes, and then I remember even the conversation I had with my son as a child, like in the car. He's just bringing up things as he learns about the holiday and what it means, and as people talk about it, and he goes, "That makes no sense." He stood for this, and he's like, and
Yep.
I'm like, a 6-year-old can figure this out. Why can't we figure things out? It's crazy.
I think because kids start a little bit more, their perception of the world, it's clean.
Right,
You
right,
know.
right. And then you came to mind again. And actually, the reason why I reached out again, and asked you if you could join me is because I was watching. I was watching the latest Netflix special on that Dave Chappelle had,
Hmm.
with somebody very dear to me, and who's also an up and coming comedian, and so we're like watching it and sort of studying it too,
Hmm.
and she got annoyed with me because I kept on interrupting, which because and I'm not giving anything away here, but he was talking about that bill, John McCain, and I was like, oh, I remember, and he
Yep.
said this, and she's like, shh, shh, and then he will say it, and he's like, man, you're killing the joke, shut up. But anyway, after the whole all that, I was like, oh yeah, I gotta reach out to Deborah. I want to talk about all this stuff because she's
Yep.
super interesting. So I'm excited you're here. But tell us a little bit about you. You're many things, and I think that's why. And it reflects on your writing. I think you're a chef. You're a former art teacher. Like you do a bunch of stuff. Tell us a little bit about you before we get going.
Um, I I am pretty much a New Yorker at this point. I've lived here for almost 30 years. I've I have a family. I have 3 kids, so I consider myself now. My primary role is like a mom, but I'm also a writer. These other things with this kind of a rich career because I felt that my career was always on kind of double time. When you work as a chef, you're working 80 plus hours a week. So while I have 20 years of experience, it feels like 40.
Hmm.
So I've always felt like this is the time where I've been spending really loving writing because it lets me slow down and reflect um, on the world around me. And I don't think my nature is to do that otherwise. Is to keep going.
Yeah. Well, it's such a pugilist attitude towards life, to be a chef.
Yep.
I should say that I'm thinking of, I don't know his name, but he wrote this book called Waiter's Rant.
Oh, I don't know
And,
of it.
oh, yeah, it's really good. It came right
Oh,
after Kitchen Confidential. It was sort of
okay.
a trend, but it's sort of like from the server's perspective rather than from the chef's perspective.
I
But yeah, I think chefs are fascinating. I only knew a handful of them, but they have the best stories. Like it's just
There's a
crazy.
lot of stories. Had I not signed confidentiality all those years, I'd have even more. But uh, I always loved working with my hands. Like I studied art and I studied food, and I always liked the immediacy kind of providing a product and doing something, but being so engaged at that minute doing it. And a few years ago, I was illustrating for someone, and I started to do it in a writing center just because it was a quiet place to work. And then I started drawing out a memoir, and I was like, this can't be kept to just pictures. So I started slowly over time writing a memoir. And then I realized I'd never written in my life for any kind of audience.
Hmm.
So I went on Substack thinking like, I should engage with others. And then it just became kind of like a weekly meditation, just something I hop on Sunday, Monday and do because I love reading other writers and I love connecting with other people and just sort of perspective. I think it's enriching my perspective and also kind of given me like the ability to connect in short form as opposed to waiting uh, to see a book published.
Right. And I bet it's a nice, at least for me, it feels like a nice exercise to even develop how you want to communicate in writing. It's like it's like a nice little sandbox. I like Substack. It's nice to do that, right?
It's yeah, it's beautiful, and it's beautiful also because there's so many. It makes me see the world a little bit differently. I think people write to me. I don't know if it's our age, um, but I find like a lot of people in my generation who read it, they connect with me personally. Like if they know me, there's a text there's a, they don't necessarily do it on the platform, but it's been really lovely to engage with people in all different ways. But I think our generation is slightly more private.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Well, that is true because I will say one of my best friends does the same with me. I sometimes write about her. Her name is Rob. She's actually from New York too.
Yep.
Her name is Robin, and she often writes to me directly.
Yep.
Because usually the messages are like a long roast or
Yes.
very complimentary. But I do have a couple of other people who are younger, like Gen Zer types, who live on the other side of the country, who are kind enough to read some of my work, and it's nice. It's nice that they too do the same. They send feedback more personally, and it feels good. Like I appreciate the feedback that I get from people I don't know on Substack, but when people who know you
Take the
actually,
time.
yeah, it's very rewarding.
It is. I think also because they have the connection of who you are as a person and who you are writing. And it's always lovely because I feel like I can get in a little bit deeper with them too.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, well, you got me thinking a bunch of things as you were speaking. One is, and it goes sort of one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. The name of your handle name is interesting because I think that your work uh, reflects what you just said about you like working with your hands and you like reading and sort of you see all this connection, but at the same time you have this handle and it tells me like a different perspective about you, which is really interesting. But can you tell us about
The
how
name.
that came about? Yeah.
The name is kind of two things. One is it's body on loan is the idea. I grew up in a conservative Jewish home, and the idea is that your body you're on loan from God. So it's like you're just living in a physical body, and that nothing is yours. It's a gift. So every day is a gift. And for me, I went through a transplant at a young age, and I think at that point of life, I sort of disconnected from anything God related or in any higher way. And then as I've gone older, I've been able, like, I think the chef years were so much where I was working, 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 just kind of surviving. And then I think now it's living and I'm reflecting, like, what does it mean? And to be grateful kind of for this life that you have. So I think I kind of go into more little moments now. Um, about enjoying life, or sometimes like the perennial, like the question for everyone, like, what does this mean?
Right, right. No, I love it. And I think it makes sense. It's just what you were saying earlier about working with your hands. I think that once you realize that we're just my friend that I was talking. Oh, we lost you. Are you there?
Sorry about that, I'm still
It's
there.
okay. Oh, okay, you're still here. Perfect. Okay. Um, your my friend, the monk that I was talking to you about. He talks about often. He says that we're just it's like a car rental,
Yep.
which is a vessel, and it's not going to be around for a long time. But I think that
Yep.
makes you appreciate things more, like the tactile piece of being human, as well as the conversations and the writing and the sharing memories and just the way you see the world. I think it's it's interesting, the universality that we have between so many faiths, right? Where
Yes.
even if people are not religious, they have a universal sense of there's more to life than just self-obsession and maximizing and protocols that make you physically better, right?
Yes.
Rather than it's just conversations and thinking more like
Yeah, I think it's a universal discussion. I think also it's like I grapple with, I'm married to someone that's Muslim, and we live peacefully with all our different cultures kind of melding in our house. And then it's how we're looking at the world. And I don't think it's as deep people think. Uh, I think we're just happy accepting people. Like there's not much to that, but I think it's analyzing it once you have kids into the world, how they're going to deal with the rest of the world. Because I think when you're happy, you could just say something is someone else's problem. But then when you see like your next generation, you're figuring out how are they going to process it without being angry or without, internalizing what's around them. So I grapple with that a little bit. And then when I write outside of Substack, I think it's more for the sense that about giving and receiving gifts and kind of like, uh, um, Yeah, learning to be gracious in all aspects of life.
Hmm. It's interesting, and I get curious when you write often about your just the family dynamics and your heritage and everybody's shared heritage and whatnot, because so I used to teach a million years ago, but then I tell people I'm a recovering teacher because when I
Yeah.
mentor people for work, I'm always telling stories. But I often tell people, um, because people don't know this, like Spain, the reason why Spanish is such a rich language is
Yeah.
because it's a heavy influence on Arabic. And I don't think people realize because often it's very reductionist, right? The story stops at the Arabs took over half of Europe for like 300 years, and then
Yeah.
and then that's it, right? But I don't think people realize Arabs actually helped unify Jewish people in Spain,
Yep.
because and also the Basque people, which now a lot of people talk about. Oh, this Basque identity. There wasn't such thing until they came around,
Right.
because they built all the roads and like really pretty much all the communication infrastructure of early Spain, or what became Spain,
Yep.
is because of them. And at the time, there were actually a lot more religious freedom amongst Christians, Muslims, and Jews,
Hmm.
because there was sort of it was for commerce,
Yep.
purposes, right?
Yeah.
But it sort of gave some benefits to it, and it wasn't until the people the Catholic king and queen took over, they started all this what they call the reconquest, which really was
Yeah.
just a way to convert everybody back to Christianity and kick everybody out of the
Yeah.
country. But Jewish people actually had more rights under our regime than under the Catholic regime. It was
Also,
really interesting.
Jewish and Muslim people are more alike than unalike. Um,
Right, right. Go ahead. Sorry, I keep interrupting you.
no, it's okay. It's okay. That I think that there's so many similarities that I think
Mhm.
people tend to look at what's different more
Right,
often.
right. That see, you get me thinking. This is why, this is why I'm excited to talk to you. So I was actually watching this French movie. It's not worth watching. I'm not even going to mention the title, but there was one little scene. So they're in France, like in Paris, and it's like a multicultural family.
Yep.
They're French. Like there's a family. The
Yep.
centerpiece is a French family, but then there is a Jewish in-law and who marry into the family, and there's another guy who's Muslim married to the family too, and but they're Christian, right? So
Yep.
they're meeting for Christmas, and then what should we call it? They're all disagreeing, right?
Yeah.
The Jewish guy and the Muslim guy
Yeah.
disagreeing a bunch of stuff, and then they start saying to each other, "Oh, the dad comes and he goes, oh, there's a gift, and it's for Jesus. He's got," and then both the Muslim guy and the Jewish guy goes, they go to the baby and go, "He's just a prophet," and then they walk away. And I'm like, it's funny because like how there are more things in common than
There
than
are
than
more things. I mean, there was a little anecdote I was hearing. Oh yeah, yeah, a story a while ago,
Mhm.
and it was about a religious family. And the religious family, one day, the mom was very good friends with a nearby neighbor, and nearby neighbor was Christian. She had lost her mother,
Mhm.
and she realized the loss of not having family for a holiday. And she just said she went home to her husband, who was like a rabbi, and kids, and was like, "We're having Christmas this year." They decorated the whole house. They went crazy with it. They, had their stockings, everything. And then the kids, of course, went back to school, this religious Jewish day school, and they said it was the best, break we've ever had. We had Christmas, and they went on, and the teacher calls because he cannot believe this story, and says, like, we're something to the effect like your child was lying, about the holidays, blah
Yeah.
blah blah. And they said, no, we were teaching them, to love and be compassionate this holiday. So they celebrated Christmas.
That's awesome.
You know,
See, I'm not really I'm not. Listen, I don't think I am. I'm neither spiritual nor religious, but I
yeah,
do appreciate and I think that's why I I tend to enjoy conversations with people who are either Buddhist or like
yep,
Krishna and like sort of that realm, because the way they talk about religion is like my friend. He goes, "Oh yeah, all these books. I think we lost her. Let me try to get back. Let me try to get her back in." If you are online, please don't. Oh, hang on. I oh, I'm gonna add her as a guest. Okay, Deborah should be with us shortly. There she is.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
And it's going on and off on my phone and laptop at the same time. I
It
apologize. I'm
no, no, don't worry.
new to a podcast,
No, no, we're all learning as we go.
but I was listening to
Yeah.
the Buddhist part.
Oh, okay, so
Which,
yeah, so let me start from the beginning. So I was saying, as you were speaking, I was thinking one of the things I enjoy talking to folks who are like Buddhists or Christian
Mhm.
and whatnot, or they practice bhakti yoga, is that a lot of them refer to all the scriptures as books, not
Yeah,
as like the law, right? They're like, oh, this book, and then if you talk to somebody, and I've seen the dynamic where might have somebody who's very Christian or very Jewish or and
yeah,
whatnot.
observant. Yeah,
Yeah, and then you have the back to yoga people, and they're like, oh yeah, your book is really cool because we talk about this, and it's pretty much
yep.
the same thing, and they concentrate more on like they don't really care to
It's
recruit
the,
you into their team rather
no,
than like, yeah, it's just universal.
it's the concept. It's
Hmm.
the concept, the human, the human spirit. It's really, I think it's the same across the board. It just comes off with different words.
Right. But and I think some of the life experience you share eh, bring that to life for you, and I think that's what makes it. I think it influenced the way you write and just the way you, as I listen to the way you talk too. But um, I was curious if it'd be okay with you if we talk a little bit more about just your family heritage because
Sure.
it's really interesting. So I know the last few pieces that you wrote about your trip to Japan,
Yeah.
and you also talked about written about um, you know uh, part of your husband's family is African descent. It's just
Mhm.
really really
Yeah.
interesting altogether. If you
Yeah.
want to talk about that.
Sure. Sure. Do you want me to talk about anything in particular or?
Well, yeah, I was just more curious about how you may think you and maybe your children look at the world differently because you have access to such a like front row seat of the world. I feel like often people who have this type of background, like the children, they
Yeah.
don't live in New York or they don't live in you know DC. They live in the world, and I've noticed that
Yeah.
from even just from my childhood, which is also multiracial and multicultural. But like, can you talk to a little
Sure.
bit?
I mean, I
Mostly
think
out of curiosity for me.
I think when you're young, or at least my family, like my youngest, I think he's still figuring out the world. Like he's been to Guinea. We've all been to Guinea together. We've been home and we practice kind of both, but we're both our family, I would say, is more culturally those religions.
Hmm.
So my husband might celebrate it once during the 1 month during the year, observe Ramadan, and then the rest of the year we're kind of just existing and the same. So when I know my youngest, when he first saw someone going to prayer on the street on Friday prayer to the mosque, he said, "Oh look, he's going to synagogue just like us."
Yeah,
I think they don't see so much differently until now as they're like my older two are getting older with their friends, and I think questions come about, and I think we address them one by one as they come.
that's great. My
um,
my son, when he was a kid, he used to say, "I'm a panda," and
oh, I
one
love
time,
that.
yeah, and I said, "How come?" I just asked him one day, and he's like, "Well, because I'm part indigenous, I'm part Chinese, I'm a little black, I'm a little
Yeah.
European." She's like, "I'm a panda," and I'm like, "Oh, that's really cool. I like how they
Mhm.
sort of."
How did you address it growing up with him?
I so I just okay. So again, I'm gonna date myself. And I want to disclose things that I don't think I ever shared this with many people outside of my personal circle. But um, so Barack Obama was the first Democrat for whom I voted, and it
Yeah.
was because of my son.
Hmm.
I was talking. This is I'm not going to get into why, but I was talking on an interview on NPR a million years ago when he was running for office, and and we're talking about identity and like Chinese, like the Chinese Americans and how Chinese got the rights to be citizens in the U.S. During this
Yep.
anti-Chinese congressional actions or whatever back in the day. But so around that time, my son was really um, into Barack Obama for some reason. He was young. He was a baby. He was a
Yeah.
kid, and and so and I wasn't really paying attention to him
Yep.
at the time. I just thought he was a young senator, and like any other politician, I just thought, oh, young, good looking,
Charismatic.
people like that. It's just the next fad, right?
Mhm.
Let's see how long that lasts. But then my son said, Dad, you gotta listen to him, and I'm like, okay, why? And he goes, he's like us, Dad, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what? He goes, yeah, he's like us. He goes, he's not black, he's everything. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, so I started looking into him. And then I called myself during the conversation on NPR saying, he's the future. He's the future not because he's going to lead the country to better things. He's the future because he's the reflection of the children of today. We have this baggage where I heavily identify with my being indigenous and ignore my European experience, ignore and
Yep.
reject often at that time, some of that part of my heritage. And
Yep.
I embrace and I said, and often we are so forced to choose a team,
Yep.
and it's hard when you are, when you're like, at least my generation, the generation of people who had to choose a team. Like you had to be black, you couldn't be diverse because people
Yeah.
force the laws force you to it, the culture
Yeah.
forces you to it in America, or even even in Europe at the time where you they don't know what to make of you when people see you. Like, what are you? Like they don't get it.
Oh, I think that
Yeah.
question still exists, especially even in New York. All the time. We had a conversation, I think it was 2 nights ago at the dinner table, about ethnicity versus your genetics.
Hmm.
And we were
Right.
talking about a passport form because we had to renew our passports. And we were talking about it if they understood the difference. And we said, well, it's kind of a misnomer when it's on a piece of paper and it says, what's your ethnicity?
Right.
They're really asking for your genetic makeup.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Uh, and it was a very good conversation, and I think they understand it because we're mixed. We have Vietnamese blood, we have African blood, we have Ukrainian, we have Indian, we have Caucasian. We kind of run the gamut,
Hmm.
and how you see yourself, like what you check off on those boxes. Sometimes, like there aren't enough boxes for us, you know.
Right. Right. I
Uh,
yeah. I Okay. So
so
I'm
Panda might be better if they put up another
Yeah,
box.
to put a little pen. Actually, it's funny. I spoke to this is the past administration, the director for the census at the time.
Hmm.
I They were kind enough to the people with whom I worked then, for whom I worked then. We had to give feedback on how the next census will come about. Not me really. I was just working with the team. We had actual subject matter experts, but my instinctively, I was think, there's something wrong with this form because when I had been involved working with the census before, uh, I never, I don't think they've been effective at explaining to people the difference between ethnicity and race and how to express that more appropriately. And I think it's a disservice to the new generation of American children, because, again, I I I, I know a lot of people for perverse incentives, mostly political, monetarily, they don't like this, but I think it's and I'm talking about both on the right and the left. It's not convenient for them to have such a diversity of people because then it's really hard to pitch them anything. You cannot just be like, "Oh, this is interesting to your collective," because your collective is you are a citizen of the world. So it's really hard to
Well,
communicate
everyone
that.
likes to put people into categories, right? I
Right,
mean, that's human nature. And even if we had one homogenous society, if we lived in a country that was considered, oh, everyone is this skin color or everyone has this type of eyes, there's always variations within that, and they'll people will find a way to, you know,
right.
subgroup.
Well, I mean, I guess we're animals of pattern recognition, but I mean, like, like at least politically, right? From for the
Right.
purpose of the census. I think it's
Mhm.
really a lot of people celebrated narrowing things down, and I was like, no, no, you have to expand it because
Mhm.
there is a beauty in in reflecting the true makeup of America.
Mhm.
Like like your children, my child. I feel like more and more, especially living in DC, more and more you
Yep.
see all. I'm sure in New York too, right?
Yep.
All these
Everywhere.
types of like even my look, my like my family in New York. I always tell people, oh my, my Jamaican, Chinese, whatever uncle, and or my Puerto Rican cousin, or my
Yeah.
Haitian, whatever. And it's like they're like, but you're not. And I'm like, well, yeah, but they are. Like
Yeah.
we're part of a big family.
Mhm.
But I think that reflects the reality of America, and I think that if anything, it doesn't show a division, and but the diversity itself shows how, and going back to what you were saying, how when you bring it out to the personal level, nobody cares about all that stuff. They just care that you're a good person and
Right.
what you do with your vessel in which you're
Yep.
occupying at the time, and how you handle people around you in your world. That's really what matters ultimately, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I wanted to talk a bit about one of your writing pieces that I really like, and I was wondering if you'd be so kind to read it to us.
Sure.
It's called, and I'll put on the show notes later, folks,
Okay.
if people are watching, and that way people can just read them as in the full version. But I was wondering if you can read it. The one. What should we call it? It's called My Inconclusive Identity,
Yes.
and if you can read it, but stop right before intention over condition, because I want to talk about that later on.
Sure. Dear readers, there have never been two people more alike and yet more unalike than my late father and my husband, black and white, Jewish and Muslim, liberal and conservative. And then I have a photo of them together having a meal in Spain. And still, they shared the same kindness, curiosity about world events, and an intellectually engaged friendship that surpassed everything we see. I'm deeply devoted to my husband and forever in awe of the bond between him and my late father. I adore that bond because it mirrors the same unconditional love I have for our children. The journey to motherhood, conceived through rarity, has offered a unique facet of parenting that allows me to be fully loving and fully living. I do not expect my children to inherit my traits. We are who we are. We are all who we were meant to be. And then I went on, coming and going. I'm at a crossroads, nostalgic, yet moving forward into new pursuits, like Basquiat at 19, who wore a distinctive haircut because he wanted to look as if he were coming and going at the same time. My hair now carries a few distinguished silver strands, yet every few months I find myself dyeing my roots, justifying it by saying my kids are still in elementary school. Same, but different. This constant push and pull between the person I was and the person I'm becoming is the essence of what I write about here at Body on Loan, exploring how we live and thrive when we experience life in many facets at once. And then I'll go on to the genetic guessing game. Is that the portion?
Yeah.
The genetic guessing game. Surely I'm not the only one intrigued by Ancestry, 23andMe, or anything in that vein. Recently, 23andMe filed for bankruptcy, and people worried about their personal health, family, and identity being leaked. We all think of ourselves as utterly fascinating. Most people turn to DNA testing to discover what they're made of, to learn the odds of inheriting illness, to feel some sense of control over the uncontrollable. I confess I've eagerly ripped open those boxes and sent them off multiple times, only to receive new ones for a redo, until I was met with a letter declaring my results inconclusive. I suspect the lab techs were simply baffled to find two different people in one swab. My husband insists these tests are just entertainment, highly inaccurate, and that I should take them with a grain of salt. He jokes that if I'm so set on seeing results, maybe my brother should take one instead. But that's not me, I mourn, even though the me I am now lives in a good place on this earth. Forensics would have a difficult pinning me for a crime. I am a chimera. I carry cells with two different genotypes, perhaps those of the person I was born as and those of my brother, whose marrow offered me new life in 1997. Why are these tests important to us? Why would finding out I'm 2% of anything make me question who I am? My husband reminds me again these tests are just for fun, but I sigh, thinking of my grandmother, her black curly hair and deep olive skin. Deep down, I know what I carry of her is her love, not her lineage percentage. When we think about tests, we forget that people have always been moving across the planet. Our genes should be mixing. Our lives should be defined not by where we came from, but what we do earthside. Intention over condition. There's a spiritual
Okay,
belief that the
sorry.
bodies are unlinked.
Let's try right there because I want you to read that piece later
Yeah.
on, if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
I love where you start, where you stop, where you say, what matters is not where you came from, but what we
You
do on
do.
the earth side. I think that that line is lovely and it's so true. And right before, and this is where you really caught my attention when I read this piece, when you said that the world has always been interacting with each other forever. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I find it baffling that people look at me like I have three heads anytime I say something like that. And I give actual examples. Like I always tell people, one thing that you'll get from me is I'm very long winded when I speak.
Yep.
So, but I like to talk to people, even if it's mundane information. I like to bring receipts to it, right? So often I'll say something like, "Oh, the world has always been, you know, interacting with each other,
Yep.
and there's no such thing as, you know, one types of people because
Yeah.
commerce made it possible for us to be, to have a mixture of things, and or like or when people say crazy things. Like I grew up, I remember growing up, people saying when I lived in New York, people saying, "Oh, but people from Spain, they're the white speaking, they're the white
Yeah.
Spanish speaking people," and I'm like, "Have you ever gone to Spain?" And like, and I will tell people like, you know what a Spanish person like. I remember in junior high school having an argument with a friend, going, "You know what a Spanish person is? It's a Celt mixed with a Jew, mixed with an Arab, mixed with a Greek,
Mm-hmm.
mixed with a Roman. That's what a Spanish person look like. What are you talking about? But so I think that that sentiment or the idea of we are more one peoples than not,
Yep.
it's always been in the back of my head. So I really like how that resonated with me, that one line. But I wanted to talk more about the last line where you say what matters is what you do on earth, because that goes back to this talk about body on loan and whatnot. So what does it mean to you? uh, like, how does that affect your purpose in the world, to have this body on loan?
I think it's to think more or less about the material than more about your action, which I think is very hard in a consumer society, everything around you. But I think it's constantly thinking like, is this meaningful, or what am I doing isn't always for myself. I think you just start to it sort of you evolve of what you think is important when you do that. And I think being born a certain way, like being born believing that you're gifted or you're smart or you're a certain way, it doesn't really matter. It's what you do with your abilities. Um,
Yeah, you can do a lot of bad things if you're really smart too.
absolutely. I think that's the thing also with all the groups having ideas. In every single group, there's people that do bad things. Everyone does bad things, but it's to what degree.
Right, right. No, I really like what you're saying because just by chance, last night I was reading somebody. I don't know who she is. She's from Spain. I know that much, but she only has one post. Like she's new to Substack, and she
Mm-hmm.
was talking about, and I'll share that on the show notes
Yeah.
because I'll find her. But she was talking about how she went tanning in Madrid, and then she got all the spots, and she was talking about, I'll never get my tan part to match my white part, and like, why am I so obsessed with this? And then she started going into like, optimizing your looks and health and
Yeah.
whatnot. And it just got me thinking too, and it made me reflect on the conversation we're going to have today. Is uh, I think that in this consumer culture, it is trendy to want to take care of your body and to be
Right.
healthy and live longer for the people that love you or whatever. And I think that's important, but there is a risk of becoming self-obsessed, right? Because uh,
Absolutely.
you start worrying about protocols and whatnot, and then often you forget about what's important, which is moments like having a conversation with somebody that you enjoy talking to or whatnot, or
Yeah.
teaching them a story or whatever.
Yeah, nothing goes to your grave. And I think the other idea is like, yeah, you want to be healthy. I think that's what it is. I think, also I think happy, whatever that means to you. You're laughing because I said something in jest. I saw someone a while back with roller skates. And I said, oh, I want roller skates for my birthday to my kids. And my son turned around and he's like, Mom, I mean, aren't you, I mean, you look this way, but aren't you like close to 50 or something? And I said, yeah. I said, you can chronologically, we're all going to age. I said, but you can, if you're active and you can do it, there's no reason not to. It doesn't mean you're a little kid because you like to be active. So we
Right,
were talking about what it means, and I think part of it is like kind of really enjoying every moment that you have too, as part of that.
right. Yeah, and for that, even you don't even have to be spiritual or religious to appreciate that, right? Because I know
Yeah.
one of the biggest lessons from friends of mine that are existentialists is that point of you have to make life worth living by living it, like actually living the
Yep.
moment, living and
Being
enjoying it.
present.
Now, when did that happen for you? When did did it happen all at once, or is it something that you came to terms with? How did you figure that that again that you are a body alone, and then really what matters is what matters to you now? Like, how did that
I
happen?
think I always had a pure sense in that, like, who I was is who I was, kind of a thing in some regard. But I think as I've gotten older, I think when I started to slow down from cooking, I started to really say, like, well, this is occupying my time, but what does it really mean now? Like, I'm healthy, I'm living, I'm working, I'm doing fine. But now what does that mean? And I think it's come more like a midlife, more in midlife than any time, because I think you look at it, you're like, well, I have time on this earth. I'm going to make the most of it. I think you're more aware of that as you age.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that's true for all the young voters out there. Sorry.
We'll see. We'll see.
But
I
yeah,
think it's natural when you're young to feel immortal.
right, right. Well, and actually, what's said now, and your piece got me thinking about that too, is um, there is a unintended side effect to success too, because what I've noticed lately is all these multi-billionaires and all these guys, and I say guys because it's mostly men in
Hmm.
the podcasphere, obsessed with living forever,
Yeah.
obsessed with. I just don't understand. Like, I know some people are like investing like 2 million a year just to try to find ways to stay alive forever, and people are injecting all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Mostly men, to maximize their their protocols, and I just, it's almost like you're almost too rich
It's a
to
fear.
be.
It's like a cultural fear of death.
Hmm.
I think other cultures look at it as a cycle of life, like you're not
Hmm.
on this earth forever. And that's part of what gives you the drive to do things.
Right.
Having forever is not necessarily a good thing for
Yeah.
anything.
It's exhausting.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it would really put the pun on the cliche, like, putting off today what you can do tomorrow.
Right. 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 Exactly. Now, I'm going to shift gears because I wanted to talk to you about that one piece that made me react to you. I wrote a piece called the systems to activate and the lives
Hmm.
in the left they shorten. And again, if you join us a little later into the conversation, this is the part where uh, uh, I want you to go read it, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. Debra speaks about an occurrence wherein, while on the subway, somebody, a very angry man, says some nasty things, racially motivated things to her and her child, and then he took off. But then the lesson, or what stood with me at the end, was when Deborah writes that she tells her child, "I'm your mother," and I thought that was lovely. I think that I mean, if you just wrote one paragraph and just said that, that would have explained everything for me. I thought
Hmm.
it was great, but and then it provoked me to write to write a response. My original response was going to be, and I blame uh, I think his last name is Kahneman. He wrote Think Fast and Slow for this. And my first impression was, well, being love and being happy and being happy in love with love keeps you healthier, and being
Yep.
angry, causes long-term disease or whatever. And I was just going to write a commentary and say, oh, forget that
Yeah.
guy. You're gonna live longer because because of
Yeah.
you tell to your son, I'm your mother, and that brings happiness and health. And then I'm like, well, is that true though? And I started thinking, because my this is where my brain went at the time. I know Kahneman talks about, you probably heard about this, where if you are sad, if you put a pencil in your mouth and bite on
Right.
it, right? It makes you smile. That sends a message
Hmm.
to your brain of happiness. The same thing if you frown, even if you're like you're having a good day,
Hmm.
it sends a signal. It makes you sadder. So I'm like, well, if that's true, then being happy and being having love in your life will help you live longer too, right? And then I'm like, well, but is that true? And I don't like writing things just on the fly.
Yeah.
So then I got really curious. So then
Yeah.
I
You dug a lot deeper.
yeah, so that's how I'm doing research. And then what should we call it? Then I learned a few things, and I learned that maybe it's not conclusive that love it makes you live longer, but definitely anger makes you, it
Mhm.
really really hurts. And
Yep.
what should we call it? And I wanted to share a piece of that with you and with the people watching now. And I'm going to read just a piece of it, if that's okay. And then I wanted to
Sure.
talk about it afterwards. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me read it. Let me open it. I have it right here. Okay. Let's see. Okay. It's just a piece. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. Hopefully, people will read it. But this is where it goes. You can't fake this. You won't make it. I read pieces on Substack and elsewhere wherein people talk about choosing love like it's accessing some mystical energy,
Mhm.
like there's a positive circuit that mirrors the image of hate circuit, and then you just flip the switch and you're happy. That's not that's not what the data shows. The evidence tells us that the chronic hate runs a specific psychological program with measurable damage, and not running that program means you don't accumulate that damage. I cannot prove that love heals, but I'm certain that hate destroys, and anything that isn't hate avoids the destruction. The sustainable practice has nothing to do with some being morally superior. It's sustainable because it doesn't activate the system that leads to a system of failure. The man is trading years of his life for the satisfaction of cruelty. That is the actual exchange rate here. Cardiovascular disease is biology responding to the chronic stress. The brain uses overlapping structure for love and hate, but it distinguishes between them through how those structure operates. Cortex engaged versus disengaged, motor preparation for protection versus harm. Uh, um, Sorry, I don't have my reading glasses, sort of had them. I'm going to take this off so I can actually uh, read it. Uh, Silence processing for approach versus retaliation. My instinct that both deliver equivalent rewards, that the brain doesn't distinguish that giving is what they share. None of that survives the research. That what survives is this: hate, when chronic, produces documented psychological damage through sustained activation of stress response systems. The endpoints are coronary disease, diabetes, and
Mhm.
shortened lifespan. A mother and her child walked away without activating that system. Whether they activated something equivalently beneficial, we can say, but they didn't trigger the program that uh, reliably produces disease. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes choosing differently isn't about accessing healing, but about not running the program that kills you instead. That's what the evidence actually supports. I guess that's what John Lennon meant when he said, instant karma is going to get you. It's going to
Hmm.
hit you right in the head. You better get yourself together, darling. Soon you're going to be dead. Anyway, so I wanted to read that because I felt like um, the choice you made at that point when you had that encounter on the subway, uh, you know, I think that the instinctively the gut feeling or the snap judgment that you get as a reader is she chose love or whatever, right? Or she chose to be a good mom. But I think intentionally or not, what you chose was actually uh, better life outcomes by
Yeah,
simple version of not hating.
not hating, but I think sometimes it's also even something more, maybe more simple, and that was just like let it roll off your back, because if
Mhm.
you take in all these things, you're not, it's going to hurt you. So you just let it roll off your back. And I one thing isn't out of love, but I say this like, your hate isn't my problem. you
Right.
know I kind of say it like, ah, that's just an angry person. I can chalk it up to that, like, does, because they don't know me, or they don't know my son, they don't know our family, but that's their kind of baggage that they have too, and that's not necessarily out of love either. I think part of it is just like, just very much that if you took in every kind of hateful thing that you heard and went off of it, you would always be reacting.
Right. 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 Well, also it's practical, right? When you think about it, like when I hear you say that, and it touches. This is where my brain goes with this. It touches some of the values that even libertarians have. Because they're in this interesting middle, right? They're not liberal and they're not conservative. They're like something else.
Right.
But one of the main values that they have or beliefs is that you don't kill people or hate people with whom you trade, and that's
Yeah.
why they're so into open markets because
Hmm.
just I'm just thinking about out loud here, but um, just what we've been talking about, you know, commerce open doors for people to get to know
Hmm.
each other, and yeah, if you are depending on somebody to buy your stuff or to interact with you on a daily basis, it's a lot harder to hate them.
Yeah.
And there's so many examples in our history, world history, that teaches us that, which is interesting.
Yeah, you have to learn to get along with people.
You have no choice.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
choice. And in
yeah.
this one, I think it's because I didn't need to interact with that person necessarily,
Hmm.
because I was like, we have we can just go about our business. We have places to go, things to
Right,
do. And I think that makes it easier too, because you're not confrontational. You're not in a room with someone kind of pinned up where things could build. I think you could say, oh, well, let's keep it moving. But I think for me, one of the first time I think I've felt, and I think everyone's felt, this hate at one point directed towards you when you don't know a person. But I think for my son, it was so different, because I think there's an innocence to a child. A child doesn't look at the world that way,
right,
unless they have information from an adult. So I think that was interesting. I felt felt it hard for me to hear it, but I think it was nothing new to me.
right. But now, okay, so it makes me wonder. I often say, and this is my own regional bias here. I often say that forever felt fortunate to have grown up in New York because there's a reason why the only place in the world where you refer to as the city and everybody knows it's New York, whether you're
Hmm.
here or in Vietnam or anywhere in the world, it's New York because it's the city and it
Hmm.
teaches you a lot. So I wonder, because you just touched on this a bit, I wonder if the massiveness of a city like New York or London gives you the opportunity to be able to sort of brush off some of that stuff because you have things to do and you got to get places. Do you think that's part of the influence, or do you think that that experience would have been a lot harder to manage if you lived, I don't know, and I don't want to put any region down, but like some sad little town in the
I
south or something?
I think it makes it just by sheer numbers, by the chance of this not being a once in a lifetime thing. maybe in that opportunity that you're exposed to a lot throughout a lifetime. The more people you're exposed to, the more, in some ways, you're either sensitive or hardened. And I think, like, when I was cooking early on, someone asked how I would deal with a certain, when I had an interview, a certain difficult personality. They were kind of throwing scenarios out.
Mhm.
And I just said I would just let it roll off my back, you know.
Right.
And I think that's this in some ways. Like, I see it for my son, but I also feel like you have to not be hurt by what someone says sometimes, because whatever they're saying has nothing really to do with you. It has to do with their perception.
Right. Yeah, and their need to, well, not their need, but I wonder often is the need for their brain to sort of get that dopamine rush. Unfortunately,
Maybe,
through hate, you know.
maybe. I think you went into the neuroscience of it, and I think I didn't think that so much about the benefit long term. I just thought about that moment, that day.
Right.
So it's interesting to hear how you're looking at anger, um, and love and the benefits of it.
Well, I was a really angry child, so I had to like do research before.
But you had a channel. I think that's
Yeah.
that's that's interesting that you say that, because I think anger is good as long as you channel it in a way that's positive. So I think, like, having a sport, having a focus, that was a very positive way of, expressing it in some ways.
Right. Well, and also helping you regulate your nervous system because you don't realize how having that baseline of anger or hate, whatever you want to call it. I mean, our brains, our bodies are not designed for that. That's just for like when crap hits the fan, so to speak, right? That's when it
Right.
matters. But then it needs to go away, and that's why it
Hmm.
behaves that way. I just by chance last week I was talking to a dear friend of mine. She works for a psychology group in Spain, and she was actually explaining. I was telling her that we were going to talk, and she was prepping me. She was like, "Listen, don't say anything stupid. You're not a subject matter expert. Let me explain how the nervous system works." But I was like, "Well, yeah, I get it. No, but yeah, the more I learn about it, the more I realize the what you did is in maybe by via instinct or because you were busy, but that avoiding that baseline of anger as your
Hmm.
foundation for daily life, daily living, it's really something that not only is a great lesson for children to learn to regulate their own nervous system, but it just like it's something everybody should just take into account when they go interact with the world because it's just a more peaceful to live.
Yeah, I think there is something to living peacefully, for sure.
Yeah, so I don't know. I keep going. I find myself talking about that piece often. So yeah, I'm really thankful that you wrote it. I don't
I'm
know if it's
thankful you came
obvious.
across it.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask if we could read the last piece of that in a bit, and we'll finish the conversation with that. But before we do, I wanted to just thank you for being here and thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
your thoughts. You come in with ideas and with a plan, and then the best part is when you talk to interesting people is that it just goes all over the place, and then I get about 30% of what I wanted to talk about
I
covered,
think
and
I
I
think
think
that's okay. You had a lot. You had about 5 articles, so you had a lot of to discuss in a shorter bit amount of time.
right on. But I wanted to finish with the last part of the particular essay. But I want to know if you wanted to share anything anything about it or anything before that. So before we close.
No, I think we should end there, because we've kind of hit all over the place. I mean, I was going to touch on the chaos garden that you wrote about
Oh,
a
what
bit,
are you talking about? You can
uh,
give it 2 minutes, really quick, if you want.
but I think that would take a whole nother episode.
Okay. Well, we
'Cause
could come back.
okay.
Yeah, you're awesome anyway. So perfect.
uh,
Okay.
where would you like me to hop in on this one? Would you like me to
So
read it from?
let me look at my notes. It's where right at the very top where it says intention over condition.
Oh, wait a second. Intention.
So like the tail end of the that essay you were reading earlier.
Oh, one moment. Sorry about that. Uh, I was reading L'Chaim and Martin Luther King Day.
Okay, we can do that too.
Okay, but I could go back to intention over
Okay.
condition. Let me find what one that was. Um, the beginning, kind of what brought me onto here.
Yeah. So the intention over condition, there is a spiritual belief.
Okay. Uh, is this about the birthday party that we're talking about?
Yeah. Hang on. Let me send you the link. One second.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm almost there. Um, Here it is. I'll put it on the chat here. Can you see it there? Or shall I email it to you?
Entry 3, my inconclusive. Okay, we're back to that one.
Yeah, yeah. It's just at the very end. I think it's a lovely
Okay,
end.
sure. There's a spiritual belief that our bodies are on loan, that no matter what they're made of the body is just a shell. I'd like to accept that, but if I genuinely believed it on a cellular level, I would not have wanted those results so badly. It is the same difficult choice we face in defining our lives. Do we focus on the external condition or the internal intention? People feel empowered by knowing what illnesses they're genetically prone to, but what value does that really add to our quality of life? I imagine it makes us try to time our dying instead of living. These days, I find control in taking deep breaths instead of grinding my teeth and lifting weights to keep my bones strong, though I'll happily blame genetics for my love of La Dolce Vita. Recently, we enjoyed warm apples infused with cinnamon, lemon, vanilla, and maple syrup served over vanilla ice cream. I was ill once, obviously survived, and that experience continues to shape the way I explore time, love, and parenthood. What has shaped your life?
And I hope that people left with that homework so they can think about it. And Deborah, thank you for the gift of your work, and thank you for being
Thank
here.
you for your gift of time. It was lovely.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye
everybody.
bye.
Bye, Deborah.
Bye bye.